Welcome back for another episode of Errant Adventures, the solo actual play podcast where stories are told at the speed of dice. With me, Steve Morrison, your game master and solo player. Now come on, let's grab the dice and see where our story goes. Welcome back for Chapter 35 of Book 1, Meridian. Last time, Ludin Sartan overhears the plan to smuggle Minister Torvarius to Cassida aboard the Howlin' Wolf. He risks a transmission to Hierarchy agents on Equilon to reveal the secret. His warning makes it to Hieromonk Zibella Doran, the spy master assigned to Equilon. Together, they plot to capture the wolf before it rendezvous with Torvarius. Unaware of the treachery, Sejana leaves the wolf with Mac to fulfill her part of the mission. Ayati and Einar handle unloading and loading cargo to the ship in the intervening 2 days. In the middle of the night before they're meant to rendezvous with Sejana, Ludin sneaks Hierarchy commandos aboard the wolf. Ayati is still awake and realizes something is wrong. She tries to get a message out to Sejana, but it's stuck buffering in the Harrower's comm system until Sejana comes into range. Ayati wakes on the cold metal deck of the ship, her hands and feet tied together. Straining against it for a second, she discovers just how little give there is. Her muscles scream at her, and she tries to shove the discomfort away. Turning her head, she looks around. She's still on the bridge, tucked away in a corner of the room, alone as far as she can tell. She strains against the cord again, biting her lip as her muscles protest. "It hurts more if you struggle," the quiet voice says, sending a chill through her bones. Going still, she tries to steady her breathing as fear blooms. A whisper of material cuts through the air as someone stands and walks around into her line of sight. Ludin crouches down, face cold as the deep. A battle between defiance and fear struggles through Ayati, but she forces the fear to the back of her mind and stares up at him. "Why?" she asks. He sighs and looks away. "I never meant for it to come to this," he says. "You were never supposed to know." That doesn't answer my question. He looks back at her, and for a second she can almost believe there's a crack in that cold facade. "The mission must come first. When I heard about Torvarius, I had to relay that information." She stares at him for a long moment. "You've always been a Plithan agent?" When he doesn't answer, she forges ahead. "Why join our ship? What could you possibly hope to gain from crewing with a small cargo transport?" "I'm not going to tell you what my mission is," he replies. "That would be dangerous for both of us. But I will tell you this, I needed legitimacy, and crewing aboard a Cassidan cargo transport would provide that. Like I said, I never meant for you to get caught up in anything, but..." He trails off as the woman Ayati saw before enters the room. Ludin stands to attention. The woman looks down at Ayati, then back to Ludin. Then she gestures for him to follow. He does, and they leave the room, the door sealing behind them. Ayati strains again, but he was right. The more she tries to fight against the cords, the tighter they become. Ludin's only gone for a few minutes. When he returns, Ayati says, "Where's Einar? Is he all right?" He glances at the door, then back at her. "He's fine. Being held in the hold. Zib, our commander wants you kept separate. You're to remain here until Luciel makes contact with the rendezvous coordinates." "Then what?" she asks. "You slit our throats and dump us out the airlock?" "No," he replies. "The commander assured me you'll be taken to a work camp. It's not so bad, and you'll still be alive." Ayati studies him. He sounds genuine, but she's struggling with the fact that he's lied to her face since the moment he came on board. How would she know if he was being genuine or not? "I want to see Einar," she says. "That's not going to happen." When Sejana reaches out, you're going to need someone to play along and make sure she's not suspicious. I won't do it if I don't get to see him. If you don't play along, the commander will have both of you killed. Luden leans against the console, head bowed. Even if you warn Luciel, she's going to get herself killed trying to rescue you. The best thing you can do for everyone is play along. I'll make sure you all end up at the same camp. Maybe I should talk to your commander, Ayati says, nodding towards the door. Shaking his head, Luden turns back to her and says, You don't want to do that. Trust me. Trust you? She snorts. Did that once. See where it got me? No, fuck you, Luden, or whatever your name is. He rocks back on his heels and stares at her, anger clouding his face. Listen, she would just as happily kill you both, but I convinced her to spare your lives. Without me, you'd be dead already. I want to see Einar. You won't get anything from me until I have. Luden growls out his frustration and stands. Fine, I'll get the commander, but she'll be less kind to you than I have been. When Ayati says nothing else, he throws his hands up and stalks out of the room. When he returns, the woman is with him. She stands over Ayati and says, You wish to speak with me? I want to see my captain, Ayati replies. I know you're keeping me alive to handle any transmissions from our friends, but I want to know Einar's all right. I want to talk to him. No Einar, no help. The hierarchy commando considers for a moment, then nods. Very well, I'll have your captain brought to the bridge. Luden shoots her a surprised look, which he quickly schools into calm when she turns to him and orders him to bring the Haldren. Once he's gone, she crouches down and looks Ayati in the eye. If you don't help us, I will make your death so slow and so painful, you'll be begging me for release in the end. But if I do help you, you'll make my death quick? The commando holds her gaze, but says no more. Ayati shivers. Einar stumbles through the door a few minutes later, hands bound behind his back. There's blood on his face where it looks like he was hit in the nose. Seeing her, his eyes widen a little, and his relief is evident. The commando stands and guides him over to where Ayati's bound. She forces him down to the deck and looks at Ayati. Here he is, safe and sound. Talk if you like. Einar says, You all right? Yeah, Cap. It's good to see you. Ayati looks up at the woman standing just behind her captain. What'd they do to you? He chuckles. The first one through the door of my cabin got more than he bargained for. It was too close quarters for them to get their weapons up, so the second one through the door butted me in the face with his gun. I'm proud to say it took 4 of them to bring me down. Not too bad for an old man. He half turns to the woman standing behind him. Or they just need better training. She doesn't respond, waiting and listening patiently. Einar turns back to Ayati. How about you? I was here when it happened, Ayati replies, double-checking the inventory, but I didn't get a full count before they kicked in the door and stunned me. We'll have to start from scratch when this is all over. Einar nods in understanding. I'm glad you're okay. All right, the hierarchy commander says. You've seen each other and exchanged your code speak. Don't attempt to warn the liar if she calls. And I won't torture your captain to death in front of you. Understood? Einar meets Ayati's gaze and surreptitiously shakes his head. He also doesn't believe they'll live through this. Yeah, I understand, she replies. Einar's hauled away, and she's left in silence for a while. She's not sure how much time has passed when the comm chimes. Luden releases the cords, holding her in place, and drags her up into the pilot's seat. He activates the comm system, and Ayati realizes it's only a list of coordinates. Luden stares at them, then turns to her and says, Fire up the ship. Let's pause for a moment to deal with some important logistics. We need to figure out how many commandos are on the ship. We know there are at least 5 between Zabella and the 4 who subdued Einar. I want to keep an element of randomness to this as well, so I'm going to roll a d6 and add that number to that base of 5. 2. All right, so there are 7 commandos on the Howlin' Wolf. That could have been so much worse. I think there's a question about whether or not she receives the message. The commandos jammed the comms while they made the assault, so Ayati's message went into the Harrower's comm buffer. I initially said that it would send when Sejana's Q was in range, because I was thinking they would keep the jam going, but that doesn't really make any sense. How would the coordinate communication come through? Well, I think it's likely that the jamming tech is blocking outgoing messages, but not incoming messages, and that the system can be modulated to allow some outgoing messages, for instance, a response to that coordinate message. So let's go ahead and ask the Oracle. 75 or less will be a yes, that's how it works. If it's 76 or higher, they dispose of the dampening altogether once the ship is under their control, and that message in the Harrower's buffer sends, giving Sejana more time to prepare. Here we go. 71. So freaking close. All right, final bit of detail. Let's kit out our commandos. The hierarchy commandos are going to have a strength of 9, dexterity of 9, and endurance of 10. Their melee and gun combats are all +2. They have combat armor that offers 13 armor protection, and they carry laser carbines, which have a range of 150 meters and deal 4D damage. They also have flèche pistols with a range of 10 meters that deal 3D -2 damage. The flèche pistols only have a magazine of 2, but they are silent. I think that's enough detail for now, so let's get back to the narrative. The wolf descends towards the open clearing beside the minister's yacht with the same easy grace Ayati usually imbues into her piloting. Sejana spares the ship barely a second glance as she turns to Mac and nods. He grins at her. "Showtime, Mare." She looks past him toward the minister and the other 4 security guards who will be accompanying them. Mac follows her gaze and shrugs. "The minister understands the importance of secrecy. He'll be very grateful once we're in Casada." "I don't care how grateful he is, as long as the rue transfers," Sejana replies. Chuckling, Mac says, "You've really taken the mercenary lifestyle to heart." "And you're doing this out of the goodness of your heart?" she asks. He clears his throat. "Well, I certainly have a vested interest in keeping him out of the hierarchy hands, but that's not just for the money." The ship settles onto the grass, and the access ramp descends. Sejana and Mac lead the way, the others behind. It's only a couple dozen or so meters between the 2 ships, and as they cross the distance, Sejana frowns. Where's Einar? She expected him to want to welcome the minister personally. They're halfway across the space when her comm chimes. She blinks once to preview the message in her retinal HUD, and the frown deepens as she sees that it came from the Harrower. She opens it, and her eyes race over the words. "Slow down your pace," she says, "but don't make it obvious." "What is it?" "The wolf's compromised. I already got a message out through my fighter, but they must have been jamming transmissions, so it synced once my Q is in range." "Shit, how many?" "No idea, but we have to assume it's a hierarchy strike team, and they outnumber us." Sejana stops walking and crouches down, rustling through the tall grass and pulling up a small rock. She holds it up to Mac, who takes it and makes a show of laughing at some joke. "We have to assume they're watching us, and are ready to ambush us when we board." "We've got to get the minister back to his ship," Mac says, still turning the stone over in his hands like they're continuing whatever anecdote caused them to stop walking. "I'm sorry about your friends, Mare, but he's my first priority. If you break and run back now, we'll just get into a shootout in the open here. There's no cover. Once we're under the ship, they'll only be able to see us from the ramp, and they won't want to make their presence known. We can stash the minister and get us onto the ship and bypass the main access. Then we take back the ship." Mac shakes his head and tosses the rock back into the grass. Sejana can see the calculus in his eyes. His job is to protect the minister, and running back to the ship is probably the best chance to do that. But he also knows Sejana isn't wrong about getting into a shootout in the open. They might get the minister back to the ship, but there's just as much chance they'll all get gunned down in the attempt. And who knows what heavy weapons they brought aboard. There's no guarantee they won't fire an anti-ship rocket from a shoulder launcher. Mac keeps walking forward, and Sejana falls in line beside him. They only have a few meters until they're beneath the hull, out of view of the upper viewports. She hears his hand making subtle gestures by his side, alerting his crew to the danger. The boarding ramp is empty, and as far as they can see, there's an empty hold beyond. As soon as they're under the protection of the hull, Sejana draws her pistol and moves left. Mac goes right, rifle aimed at the opening. Before the minister can even question what's happening, one of the guards shushes him, and they form a protective diamond around him. Sejana circles around the opening and hurries towards the tertiary access hatch. It's locked down, of course, but she connects her Q and unleashes her code breaker. Let's go ahead and roll a computer check at +3. I think this is just a target number of 8. When Ayati purged the computer system, it leaves certain backdoors for crew with the appropriate security authorizations to bypass overwritten codes. So let's see what we get. 8. It ain't fancy, but the hatch slides open and a small ladder descends. Sejana's up the ladder and clearing the hallway before the ladder has fully settled onto the ground. The hallway's clear, and she motions for Mac to join her. The big man hustles over and follows her up. She gestures down the hallway towards the bridge. The other way leads to the cargo hold. Then she points to herself and at one of the doors along the hall. He nods and follows her. Sejana approaches the door to her quarters and scans it quickly for any traps, but it appears clear, so she opens the door. The room has been trashed, but her security locker remains unmolested against the far wall. They must have scanned it enough to know what would happen if they tampered with it. Crossing the room, she opens the locker and pulls out the small case inside, which she opens and steps onto the platform, activating the quick deploy. Within seconds, she's pulling her kinetic rifle from the locker and returning to the door, kitted out in her gear. Mac nods appreciatively, and she can see him wishing he'd suited up in his armor as well. Back in the hall, she takes the route to the bridge. She knows it won't take them long to realize that the minister and company are not boarding the ship, and when they try to send someone down to investigate, Mac's guards will do their best to encourage them to stay aboard the Wolf. If she's lucky, and Einar is still alive, they'll send him down first to survey the area. Mac's crew know not to shoot the Wolf's captain, and that will buy them even a little bit more time. Sejana reaches the door to the bridge, which is closed. Mac nods, and Sejana enters the access code. The doors swing open, and she's through the door, rifle raised. There are 2 figures in the room wearing dark armor, plus 1 bound on the floor. Ignoring the prisoner for the moment, Sejana goes left, knowing Mac will take the right. Both commandos turn to look as Sejana pulls the trigger, and the room explodes into chaos. Let's roll initiative. Sejana's rolling plus intellect. The commandos will roll plus dexterity, and so will Mac. Sejana and Mac will both get a +6 to this first initiative because of the surprise, and the commandos will get a -6. Sejana has a 10 plus 6, Mac has an 8 plus 6, and the commandos have a 7 minus 6. Sejana pulls the trigger, firing a burst at the commando on the left. This is going to be +3, +1 because we're definitely within short range. 14 is a hit, and that is +6 effect. Since she's doing burst fire, it's +3 damage, so that's 3d plus 9 damage. That is going to be 19 minus 13 for their armor is 6 points of damage through to their endurance. The kinetic rounds pepper the commando's body, but his armor seems to absorb a lot of it. Beside her, Mac pulls the trigger on the right-hand commando. He has the same bonuses as Sejana, so +4. 15 total. That's going to be 3d plus 10 damage. 22 points of damage minus 13 is 9. The right commando's endurance is almost completely gone with that burst of kinetic fire. The commandos react by pulling up their carbines and returning fire. Against Sejana, a 10. But because they have laser carbines, that's going to be 4D plus 3 for the effect. 18 total. The lasers pepper against her ISS combat armor, but the Durasteel absorbs the heat and diffuses it across the armor's surface. The attack against Mac, that's a 12. It's going to hurt. 21 points of damage, minus 8 for Mac's armor, leaves 13 that gets through. That chews through all his endurance of 10 and takes 3 points from his strength of 12. Mac grunts in pain as laser bolts pepper his shoulders and chest. He careens into the console next to him, propping himself up as his breath hitches. Sejana hears the sound, and an icicle of concern lances through her. She doesn't spare him a glance. Distraction in combat means death. But with the thought, she switches her kinetic rifle to auto and unleashes a barrage towards her target. Thanks for listening to Errant Adventures. If you enjoyed the show, please spread the word. And if you want to support the show directly, leave me a review or support me on Patreon at patreon.com/errantadventures. You can also buy me a coffee at ko-fi.com/errantadventures. If you want to interact with me, my handle on all the socials is @errantsolopod, or you can email me at errantsolopod@gmail.com. I also post short fiction and campaign-related materials on my website, errantadventurespod.com. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you in the deep, liars.